Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is David Bianco. Today I'm going to be doing an equipment review. It's an overview of a Phono preamp that I think you're going to find very interesting and different. It actually marries up a couple of different worlds and provides some distinct flexibility and features that I've honestly never seen before in a Phono preamp. That's coming up next on the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion.
Up in the sky! It's a bird!
It's a plane!
It's WaxWing.
I thought we needed a strong intro on this one because it's kind of like the WaxWing. Here it comes. Well, if you haven't heard of this product, you've probably heard of the Budgie Phono preamp or the Puffin. Well, the same gentleman that developed those developed this WaxWing, Shannon Parks. And for me, this was a blend of technologies on the digital side and the analog side as it came to the sound. And then on the digital side, also moving over into the capability to interface with smartphone apps. Software running on either iPhones or Androids, and the ability to do settings on this particular Phono preamp on the fly with that app. For me, it was really a breakthrough, and I think it really was obviously a progression that has come through what was found through the Puffin and the limitations on the screen there. And I'm going to get you to hear directly from Shannon Parks on some questions that I've asked him about the development. After that, I'm going to show you the features that are available on this particular unit called the WaxWing. Very simple unit, very small and light, but extremely effective. And my goal was to see if I could get this particular unit with the dreaded D word, digital, in it to sound as sonically good to me or match my Graham Slee all analog Phono preamp. That's about a $500-600 unit. So I'll give you the results of that, but first, let's listen to the interview with Shannon. One thing I have to say before we get started is Shannon is a guy who really doesn't like to get on camera, and so he was more than willing to answer these questions and do them verbally and record that and send it to me. So this will be a kind of a Q&A that is not recorded with video, but is an audio recording of what his responses were. It's a really interesting history and discussion on how he came to some of the features and functions in the WaxWing. Shannon, what was the catalyst for you to develop a product that integrated an analog phono stage with variable settings that could be controlled through an app?
It's been a long journey to the WaxWing rather than a single catalyst. Going back to the early 2000s, I spent a decade selling bare-bone tube amp kits that I designed while running an online audio forum called DIY Tube. Then in 2013, I launched my first commercial product, the Budgie Tube Phono preamp. It was a huge success, and I sold it for several years. A key feature of the Budgie was an adjustable resistive loading. Primarily it was for moving magnet cartridges, and it helped folks to tweak the sound of their cartridge. Maybe adding some warmth to their vinyl sound, or maybe more 3D imaging with more brightness. It changed the way I thought about audio. And that means a ruler flat response just isn't the goal. Our listening rooms, our ears, our systems, our personal taste, and the vinyl media itself just has all kinds of limitations and compromises. I thought that the more we can adjust these variables, the happier we would be. So that small encouragement from the Budgie became the Puffin. And that was my first DSP-based Phono preamp. It's still primarily the heart of the WaxWing's design. Then the evolution from the Puffin to the WaxWing was prompted by the Puffin's interface becoming just too complicated to control with a small 2-line LCD screen and an ever-lengthening scrolling menu. Every feature that I added to the Puffin just made it worse from a user interface perspective. The thinking was that an app could offload that complexity and make it just easier to use, to see what the current settings were, as well as to change them.
When did development of the WaxWing start? How long did it take to get the product from concept to finished product?
I think I started prototyping the WaxWing in early 2021 by hacking a Puffin along with an off-the-shelf Bluetooth module, and then controlled it with a simple Android app that I cobbled together. It didn't take long to get the prototype working, and from the very first moment that I used the remote control app, it felt incredibly intuitive and fun. And most importantly, it solved the problem I was struggling with the Puffin user interface. I was able to launch the first WaxWings then later in 2023, about a year ago. So it was about an 18-month development cycle.
So the unit has an RCA in and out, and I was wondering, is that a true analog path, or is it digitized in any way given the app interface and what you have to do to make the unit work?
Everything is digitized in the WaxWing. There's no analog bypass. So an analog input goes through an analog gain stage and then to an ADC, an analog to digital converter, which digitizes the audio. Then that gets handed off to the main micro with all its DSP capabilities. All the fun stuff is done in the digital realm, including the RIAA equalization. That's the main EQ for records. Then it gets sent to an internal DAC to be converted back to analog for the analog output. Or the internal DAC can also be bypassed for a SPIF-DIF output for coax or optical output.
To me, the simplicity of the app from a user perspective is wonderful, with definitions available and help given for the settings. Did you develop this app or have it done by a third party?
Regarding the app, I've put a ton of myself into it, and I've really obsessed over the UI and the UX. It's 100% my work. I use Flutter as my coding environment so that I can do both iOS and Android releases. Visual Studio on PC for Android, and Xcode on a Mac Mini for iOS. I admit that it has taken 10 times the amount of work that I originally guessed it would take, maybe even 20 times.
So tell me, Shannon, do you see any further updates or advancements, enhancements coming to the product in the near future?
Regarding the future, my current plan is to continue to build WaxWings for the next decade and to spend my R&D budget, both money and time, on adding more and improved functionality to it. And I'm going to make that available to all users for free via app updates. I'm staying pretty tightly focused and not looking at a family of products, which would really bog me down into hardware development and get me away from doing really tweaking the WaxWing. For example, right now I'm working on new and better methods for magic and super mono. Keeps me engaged with the WaxWing and very mentally stimulated.
As it relates to the physical product, what can you tell me about how it's built and whether it's done by a third party or whether you do it yourself?
I do have the surface mount WaxWing assemblies completed by a contractor, as that is done by pick-and-place machines, robots, but I do everything else, all the human stuff, including all the hand soldering, programming, testing, chassis prep, the assembly, and I even pack the boxes and ship them to Amazon. So since I'm involved or doing every single step of the process, I'm able to keep the production rolling and keep the quality up.
How will any functionality enhancements or changes to the product come about? Will there have to be a chip revision, or do you have capabilities already in there that it's just a matter of adding things in the current app?
I have no plans for hardware changes on the WaxWing other than required ECOs, engineering changes due to parts becoming unavailable in the future. But if there were some small changes, I'll definitely have the app sort out which model WaxWing is connected. I actually do that already, as some functions don't show up on the app until a firmware upgrade is completed.
Well, one final question. It certainly is a last but not least kind of situation, and that is the function feature of record grading, that it actually, as the record is being played, grades the record from the surface noise and the pops and ticks that it might hear. I expected maybe that grading would be more in line with the way the Goldmine standard is for ratings, as opposed to the graded A through F rating that you gave it. Can you give us a little background on how that works?
Other than possible Goldmine trademark scaring me off, the Goldmine rating system is primarily a visual grading system. The WaxWing's grade system is just looking at sound quality. So they work together a lot of the time, but are different things. A brand new record that would be mint with the Goldmine rating might still have lots of surface noise, maybe from a poor stamper or the PVC quality isn't the best, and then that would grade poorly with the WaxWing. Also, I have a lot of good plus mono records that grade as A records. So the different grading scale was intentional, was meant to prevent confusion.
So there you have it. Shannon Parks in his own words. He was really accommodating to me, and I really appreciate the fact that he took the time to answer the questions and to voice over that so we could actually hear it from him directly. So this grading feature is really interesting. I've still got it showing on here as it was progressing through this particular RCA Living Stereo series. Older record, but what it does is it's cumulative and recalculating as it goes. Then maybe it'll hit a bit of noisy spot in a record or in a lead-in groove between tracks, and it'll consider that and maybe go a little toward a lower grading and then work itself to where it averages out over time. But it gives you a good idea of how solid a record is, whatever section of it you want to play in terms of grading, whether it's the whole side or just a section or whatever. Just really something obviously that you can do through the digitizing of the information. Another feature that works because of digitizing is called magic. According to Shannon, this function gently lessens many of the small pops and clicks that are normally heard during vinyl playback, consisting of a click detector that monitors the music for outlier, transient sound events, which are then flagged. An algorithm then determines whether that flagged event was likely noise or musical in nature, perhaps a trumpet or a drum snare. Once it is determined that the event was noise, a selective filter is engaged for around half a millisecond. So the magic function is not processing 100% of the audio like a normal DSP filter, and actually may only be filtering a few seconds of audio per album side. This gentle method makes the record sound cleaner with fewer artifacts, distractions, and doesn't have a process sound at all, since very little processing is actually being done. It will make your best records sound transcendent, and some of the well-worn ones will be much more listenable. It is recommended to be left on at all times. And so I utilized this feature and found it to be very effective, especially on anything that had a discernible pop or tick. The elimination of that was nearly 100%. And I like the approach of not doing this DSP effect across the board, but only based on sensing this type of problem. Now, there are a lot of outboard units that do this as well that are a lot more expensive. So this is just another feature function that's brought into this particular WaxWing unit. Now, as it relates to the Graham sleeve, I made a few minor adjustments, as you could see, as it was showing there in red. Those are anytime you have a rating on there that is different than the default, it will show up in red. I made a few tweaks, and with those few tweaks, I was able to get this unit to where I A-B'd it, I couldn't tell any difference between it and the Graham sleeve. And I had this verified by several other people, including my friend Brad, who had come over to listen to it as well. So quite a mighty unit, really an interesting one. I'm going to go ahead and keep mine and purchase it because I think it's just a great piece of technology. And, if the word digital doesn't scare you off, I think you'll find that you can have a lot of different tweaks that you can do with this. There's a mono and a super mono switch that's in the software. On the Parks Audio website, you can actually look at the manual and see all of these different settings and what they do and what the ranges are for those settings online for basically a manual that's on an actual web page, just like it is in segments for each one of the options and features that's on there. When you click on it, as I showed you in the display as I was going through it with you as Shannon was answering questions, you could see those answers were given there. So quite the great technology blending with sound. Obviously good product parts in there to be able to facilitate this good of a sound to match a pure analog from at least what I could hear, and giving us some flexibility on things that normally we don't have control over. So I hope you found this interesting. I certainly did. Shannon has a great product. It's sold on Amazon. You can go there and look for the WaxWing. It's $499 US. And you get what you pay for. I think it delivers a great sound, and it provides other flexibility that normally you don't have. And for that, I thank him for his time and for bringing such a great product, maturing from the Puffin into this, bringing us more technology at a reasonable value. So as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so by clicking on the bell, and a comment is always welcome, as well as thumbs up for a like. And so as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on our next Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. Take care, everybody.